Hi, my name is Sarah D'Souza and I'm here today to inform you about the ugly truth about plastic bottles. The horrible news is that most of you have something to do with the problems that these bottles create. At the end of this presentation, I hope that all of you will start using clean, refillable bottles instead of those plastic ones. To make plastic bottles, first you need to extract oil from places like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Russia, and China. Governments and businesses say that Africa is a country full of natural resources ripe for extraction. Did you know that people need to mine 97 million barrels of oil a year? Imagine that. How do we affect the environment at the first stage of making these bottles? We interfere in the ecosystems by mining for the oil beneath. We are killing the habitats of different species and creating a hole in ecosystems. We've got to stop, and later on I'll tell you just how to stop. Attention during the extraction of oil is that recently Africa has become very unhappy with countries, specifically the US. The United States of America has noticed all the oil stored in Africa, and they have started taking more than their share of oil from Africa. I don't think that this is very fair of them. Now that the oil is ready, the companies are ready to make the actual 3D bottle. Plastic bottles are made from PET. Scientifically, one plastic bottle is equal to 1/3 of bottle of oil and 3 other bottles of water. Companies also use 1/4 bottle of oil and energy from fossil fuels to be able to make cool water. During the whole process of production, we are not only affecting the environment, but ourselves. The environment gets harmed because plastic bottles are made of PET. The problem is that 1 kg of PET releases 3 kg of CO2. We get affected because many plastic bottles use toxins and chemicals, and when we drink out of the bottles, the toxins are released into our body. One of the tensions that occurs during the process of the production of these plastic bottles include the US and the Fiji. What happens is that Fiji bottle companies send bottled water to US when the own people of Fiji don't get enough safe, clean, drinkable water. Don't you think that's a little unfair? Finally, when the plastic bottles are ready, it's time to transfer the bottle to a convenient area or store so that the consumers can come and buy them. First, the plastic bottles are wrapped in shrink wrap, ready to travel. These plastic bottles sometimes travel more than 1,000 kilometers to reach their destination. Sometimes it also takes 2 ounces of oil to travel. When these bottles travel, they have more effect on the environment than you might think. We're moving around 1 billion bottles in a week, in ships, trains, and trucks in the US. If this is happening, what is happening to the environment? Again, we just have to stop. Now that some of the countries have started to become aware of the environmental effects that these bottles create, they have decided that it's time to take some control. San Francisco and Los Angeles have stopped city officials from spending further on bottled water. Because we don't really need to spend, we could spend on something else. Now that the plastic bottles are in the supermarket shelf, it's time to shop. In the world, people use 155 billion bottles a year. In US alone, people consume up to 30 billion plastic bottles. Why? Why so many bottles? Well, most people buy it because of the convenient factor. It's easy to just drop by a store and pick it up. When we drink out of these bottles, it really impacts us. The type of plastic sold as number 1 is meant for one-time use. If you refill them, it is very unhealthy. Drinking from some plastic bottles that use toxins can increase the chance of cancer, and chemicals that are commonly used in plastic bottles can cause a bad heart. Dentists also say that drinking out of plastic bottles increases cavities. One of the main tensions in the consumption area is that big companies are making small communities unhappy. The reason for this is because these companies are taking the community's waters, bottling in plastic bottles, and then asking the communities to pay for their own water, except this time they're just in a plastic bottle. Now that we've finished using the bottles, it's time to dispose them. Out of all the bottles that we use, 4 out of 5 bottles end up in landfills. There are around more than 40 billion waste bottles in landfills per year. 30 million bottles end up in a day in landfills in the US. Again, stop. Our plastic bottle waste creates a huge solid waste problem for many ecosystems. If used bottles don't end up in landfills, they just go for incineration, which just causes more pollution. So there's not really an answer for which one is better, landfill or incineration, hurting ecosystems or polluting. Luckily, some countries like Australia don't enjoy the sight of landfills or incineration, so they've started campaigning to reduce the usage of bottled water to decrease the amount of solid waste problems, especially plastic bottles, in landfills. And that's the process of making these bottles. Now I'd like to go back on to the tension in production. Fiji and US. Fiji companies make more than 1 million bottles per day, and more than half go to US for money. The consequence is that the people of Fiji can't rely on drinking safe, reliable water. Isn't that really unfair? So if we don't drink from these plastic bottles, what do we drink from? If you live in a country where the sink water is clean, you should drink from it. Or you could use a refillable sports bottle that can be used various times. It only costs $10, and you can save up to $200 on plastic bottles. Isn't that great? So start. Now that you've heard my presentation, I would like to thank the people who helped me. Ms. Barhal, Ms. Bouchard, for helping me with the research. Thanks, Mr. Sturgeon, for the good tips on making a Pecha Kucha. And thanks everyone for watching my presentation. I hope that you all start using refillable bottles